Okay, welcome to a brand new episode of Hair Mistakes that Age You Faster Subscriber Edition. But this is a special episode because you guys have been waiting for a recap to touch base with some of the folks that we have featured in this series. And today, you're gonna get your wish. We are going to meet 4 of the amazing people that we have already featured, and we are going to find out, 1, did they like or hate my suggestions? 2, did they take them if they liked them? And 3, if they liked them and they took them, which ones did they take? What did they do? And how do they look now? Sound like a plan? I think that's a great plan. Oh, and I want to say a real quick, big, huge thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. More about them in a second, but for now, why don't we meet the ladies that we're going to be touching base with? Sound good? Okay. Today we are going to be focusing on the amazing ladies RHONDA, Holly, Susan, and Cynthia. Now, if you remember Cynthia, I had some pretty ridiculous suggestions for her hair color. Bright pink was one of them. So, yeah, you're going to want to stick around to see if she decided to move in that direction or it was a little bit too much. But with that said, for now, let's check in with RHONDA. Now, when we originally met RHONDA, there were a few things that I noticed about her hair that were a little bit of a concern. As far as the cut went, it was a little bit too layered from the shortest layer to the bottom, which was making the bottom look a little bit thin and didn't really support the shape. And then when we came to the styling, there was a little bit too much volume on the sides, not enough on the top, which is bringing the eye down and adding width to the cheeks. Now, as far as her color goes, I noticed it was a little bit too ashy or kind of green, but then there was also a lot of warmth in it. There was almost too warmth, and the two of those together just weren't really working. But more importantly, the bigger thing I noticed with the color was that the roots were just a little bit too light. And it was actually blending her forehead into her hairline and causing her forehead to actually look bigger than it is. As well as that color was just a little bit too harsh on her skin tone. So to combat all of this, I suggested that she actually darken her roots a bit, add a few low lights to add dimension to her hair, and allow the bottom layers to fill in a bit and lighten up some of the layers internally to create a bit more volume where we want volume. Now, as an option for this, I actually threw in the suggestion of going into a bob shape that was quite different than what she had, and I wasn't entirely sure if she'd be even willing to go that direction. So here's the bigger question. Do you think she did it? Should we check in? Yeah. Let's see what happened. So when I reached back out to RHONDA to see if she had actually taken my advice, I received this email that I want to read you first. It says, "Hi Justin, I apologize for not getting a photo to you sooner. We had a bit of a hair color disaster on the first appointment. I've had a second appointment and I think we're back on track for an improved look. I love the cut. It is amazing when I do a side-by-side comparison and the before and after photos and what an improvement it is. The color is also much improved and I have a better understanding at this point of what to work towards with my stylist on the color. Thank you so much for your advice and time with this. It is greatly appreciated." Well, no, RHONDA, thank you for trusting me enough to actually move forward. So guys, this is what RHONDA actually did with her hair. How amazing does that look? I really didn't know if that was going to be on the table, if she would really go that direction, because it was quite a bit different from where she was. But man, RHONDA, I think you killed it. I think she did a fantastic job. I love the depth at the roots. I love the direction the color is moving, and I love the bob shape on you. I think you kill it. But guys, obviously the question is going to be, what do you guys think? I think it looks amazing, RHONDA. Well done. And again, thank you so much for being a part of it. Now, let's move on to Holly. When we met Holly, I noticed the length was just a little bit too long to support the kind of layering that was happening with her hair. I also noticed that the top layers were just a little bit too short for the length, which is making the overall shape look a bit too square. On top of this, the overall shape was just a little bit too flat in general, which was weird because Holly actually could wear less volume. It actually suited her very well, but I think a little bit more volume through around the cheekbone and temple area would definitely have helped to lift the eye and accentuate her cheekbones a bit. Finally, I noticed that the bangs were just a bit too short and also accentuating a little bit of that square look. So I recommended that we actually let those bangs get a little bit longer, keep the idea of a bang, but move into something that's a little bit more graduated and a little bit more angled that isn't quite so square. As well as to allow those top layers to grow a little bit and bring that length up a little bit so that we could make the bottom look a little bit stronger and allow the top to have the length necessary to create the volume necessary to get the volume where we want to see the volume. That was a mouthful. Okay, when I reached out to Holly, I also received an email. So Holly said, "I wanted to thank you for all your helpful tips. I showed my hairdresser the pictures. She cut about 1 inch off into a bob cut and added some red highlights. And so here is what Holly looks like now." First of all, that color is striking on you, Holly. I absolutely love it. And it's amazing how much stronger that bob line looks by bringing that length up a little bit. Taking some of that length up and taking some of that thinness off allows those layers to look a little bit fuller at the bottom and actually creates a much stronger baseline. And the wave was a really good idea because the wave actually creates a little bit of that bend. Even though we'd want the top to be a little bit longer, ideally, the wave helps to kind of camouflage that and create a little bit more volume up towards the temples and the top where we wanted it. Overall, again, I think this looks incredible, and I think your stylist did a fantastic job, and I think it looks fantastic on you. Okay, before we check in with Susan, let's take a quick second to talk about the sponsor of this video, which is HelloFresh. If you're unfamiliar with what HelloFresh is a meal kit service that delivers amazing meals directly to your door. It is one of my favorite things, and Deanna and I have been using this service for probably the last 3 months, and we legitimately absolutely love it. The meals are pre-portioned, so you have way less wasted food. They have a massive variety of quick and easy recipes that minimize the prep and make the cleanup super easy. I know we've saved a bunch of money going through HelloFresh versus what we were doing, which was going out to eat a ton. It's shown to be up to 72% cheaper than actually dining out. John and I were not great chefs before this, I'm going to be honest, but now we're learning different keys on how to actually prepare new meals. So yes, this has been a huge game changer for us. So right now, make sure you head over to HelloFresh.com and use the code JustinHickox16 so you can get 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. Now, when we met Susan, there were a couple things that were happening with her hair. I noticed that the back was just a little bit too long, which was really bringing the eye down the shape. Now, compounding that concern, I also noticed that the front layers were cut a tiny bit too far back. Now, finally, as far as the cut goes, I noticed in the email that she mentioned the idea of growing her bangs out. However, my concern was that that would add too much fullness in the front and create too much of a triangular shape. So when we got to the color, I noticed that it looked as though the roots may be a tiny bit too light for the ends, and overall it looked a little bit too warm. So I made the suggestions to bring the length up a bit in the back, let some of the layers in the front fill in a bit, darken the color at the roots just a tiny bit, and keep her bangs versus growing them out. But again, the question is, what did Susan think? Did she decide to go for it? Well, let's take a look at the email that she sent when I reached back out to her. Her email says, "Hi Justin, I loved all your suggestions. You had 5 suggestions for me to try, and I did all but 1. You suggested to cut the back shorter, which I did not do. I am growing out the front layers instead, and that's actually something that would work really well. Either way, the purpose is to get that front to be a little bit longer than the back so that it doesn't look like it's dragging that eye down. I colored my hair, watched your video on straightening hair, and I am practicing that. I did not cut my bangs because they got singed putting wood in our burner, so that did suck." Oh, okay, I'm really sorry to hear that. That does suck, and I got to say that I love the fact that you worked in my constant that view doesn't suck thing into that's well played. "I appreciate your time and suggestions for me. I love my hair now. I still leave it curly every once in a while. I do have a question for you. Does it look stupid if I straighten my bangs when the rest of my hair is curly?" So that's a great question. I don't personally think that it looks stupid when bangs are straight and the rest of the hair is curly. It's something that happens quite often actually with people. The one kind of caveat that I would say is when the interior, the rest of the hair is very, very tight curls and the bangs are very straight with very little bend or no bend. So as long as you can kind of keep them somewhat close together, and I think you're doing okay. Okay, so now let's take a look and see what Susan looks like now. Susan, I love it. I love the bangs the way they are. I really like your hair straight, and I think you're doing a fantastic job with straightening it, so well done. And I love the color as well. It's got a little bit more depth, and it really brings a little bit more richness to you, so well played. I'm glad you did that. Okay, now, Cynthia, her episode was, I don't want to say controversial, but it definitely got some reaction. And part of that is because I threw out the recommendations of going into quite an opposite color range for her, totally out of left field, which I think would look amazing. But it was also one of the hardest episodes for me to create because when I looked at Cynthia's hair originally, it was a very stylized look, and it just so happens that she pulls that off very well. So the direction that I took with that particular video was more along the lines of a general idea of her bob shape overall and kind of what works for most people. So nonetheless, a couple things that I did point out were that, one, the line was a little bit too parallel to the floor. Many times this has a tendency to bring the eye down because our face lines, jawline, cheekbone structure, all that, doesn't parallel the floor. It actually angles a little bit. Compounding that concern was the fact that there was zero real layering or definitely no beveling in the back around the nape. Again, this is a stylized look that can look fantastic on people, and that's true because it looks fantastic on her. So we did throw out those suggestions, but with that, I also actually threw out the suggestions of going in a completely different direction with her color based on the idea that I really think she could pull it off. Now, one other suggestion I made for her color was that the color right now just looked like it lacked a little bit of dimension. So adding some low lights into that to kind of break up the shape overall, I think would look really nice and give her hair, again, a lot more dimension. So the question is, did she go with the crazy color? Did she change her cut? All right, should we see what she looks like? Well, let's take a look at the photos that Cynthia sent me. So clearly she did not go with the crazy color. It was a little bit too far for her. She did say that she loved that suggestion. However, she did decide to do a little bit of low lighting, which I think does add a little bit more dimension, and that helps to bring her eyes out even a bit more. And that was a big thing from the very beginning, was that her eyes are beautiful, and I really wanted to showcase them as much as possible. And I love the beveling and the layering and how all of that creates a shape that I think overall brings more attention and focus to things like her cheekbones that we wanted to bring focus to. So I personally love what you did, Cynthia. I think it looks fantastic. But hey, of course, you guys, I am far more interested in what your thoughts are. So tell me, what are your thoughts? Comment below, let me know. And again, a big, huge thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video, and make sure you head over to www.hellofresh.com and use the code JustinHickox16 so that you can get hooked up. That's honest. I love it. Okay, well, unlike singeing your hair with putting wood in a fire, that view does not suck. Yes. I'm sorry, that's not even, but you see where I'm going. It's okay. Bye.